Thank you for joining us today for another ATP Ride Report webinar. My name is Ashley Flan. I oversee airline and corporate partnerships for ATP. And today I am so excited. We are joined by Cassie Outcalt. She is a pilot recruiter with CommutAir, and she's going to be discussing career opportunities at CommutAir with us today and flying opportunities. And Cassie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for having me today.
Perfect. Now, while everyone's getting signed in, I'm going to go ahead and get this poll pulled up for you guys. So go ahead and just let us know if you would like to learn more about CommutAir, if perhaps you're here and you have already applied to CommutAir, and also let us know if you have been either applied to or been accepted into Aviate. At this time, again, I'd like to welcome Cassie. Thank you for joining us today. And to start, please just tell us a little bit more about your background and how long you have been with CommutAir.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me today, and thank you all of you for joining. Before I get started in talking about myself and CommutAir, I just want to say that I hope all of you have been safe and well during the pandemic. As we all know, this has been an unprecedented time in the aviation industry, but I personally am very cautiously optimistic that the industry is going to turn around soon and demand will increase, and hopefully we get back to flying as we used to know it sooner than later. So. With that being said, my name is Cassie. I'm one of the pilot recruiters at CommutAir, and I've been with the company almost 2 years now. Prior to that, I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. I do have a degree in aviation from Auburn University, and then I did work for FlexJet for quite some time early on in my career as a pilot recruiter as well as a business analyst in flight operations. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Now, some of our viewers did mention they are a little bit earlier on in their career. So to start, can you just walk us through a history share a brief history of CommutAir?
Absolutely. So we were founded in 1989, and we just recently celebrated our 30th anniversary. As you can see, we've operated quite a few different aircraft over the years. Before we went to an all-jet fleet, we operated the Dash 8. Our corporate headquarters are in Cleveland, Ohio, and then some big news in 2016 that happened with us is when United took a 40% interest in us, and that's when the jet era began.
Perfect. And now that we've learned a little bit about your history, can you also share with us who you are present day as a company and what type of aircraft you fly?
Absolutely. So we are a United Express carrier. We fly solely for United. We operate the Embraer 145, the LR, and the XR. We are 40% owned by United and 60% owned by Chaplin Enterprises. We currently fly to 50 plus destinations in the US and Canada, and we're going to be adding Mexico too shortly. We're small though regional. We have over 1,100 employees and about 450 active pilots, and that will be growing in the near future. We are a very family-friendly company. You'll hear a lot about the C5 family, which is our KO code, and then also you'll hear a lot about the CommutAir family. So our leadership team does a great job in keeping that family culture and that family environment moving forward even as we grow.
Perfect. And speaking of growth, you are actively hiring right now, correct?
We are actively hiring. So we are at 37 aircraft right now. So we have been a smaller regional. We will be approximately around 60 aircraft at the end of the year, and then approximately 80 aircraft at the end of Q1 of 2021. Now, bear in mind, we may not be flying all those aircraft, but with the demand, still being, suppressed from the pandemic. So, but yes, we are growing and we are going to be actively hiring pilots.
Perfect. And with that being said, so for our viewers that are interested in applying to CommutAir, where might someone flying for CommutAir expect to be based? And can you just go over some routes they might fly to?
Sure, absolutely. So the route map here is kind of pre-COVID. So as you can see, we have 2 bases, Washington Dulles and Newark. Newark was our junior base. We fly as far south into Jacksonville, Florida, as far north into Canada, and as far west as St. Louis and Memphis. We are going to be opening Houston in October, so this route map is going to increase.
Okay, perfect. And that's where the Mexico flying comes in as well?
That's where the Mexico flying is going to come in, yes.
Awesome, perfect. And all right, now that we know where we might fly, we're going to watch a video from talking about just a glimpse into the life at CommutAir.
Detroit pastor. I'm the first officer, and I'm based at Newark. The biggest thing for me, like I said, with CommutAir is the closeness of the people. It gave me a great vibe from the very beginning, and that was ultimately what drew me into CommutAir. Nancy and Angelo, they were just so warm and welcoming. And like I said, flying is flying, whether I fly here or another company, another airline, the people that you fly with is ultimately what makes, it's about your happiness. And I'm happy with the people that I fly with. So I don't mind. I don't mind it. Flying is flying. Aviation is aviation. You set rules and regulations. It's all about safety. If I'm happy when I go to work, I'm going to be more productive no matter what. And the people here are just generally great people, and I enjoy my time with them. And that was enough for me.
All right, so before we move on to our next slide and learn about compensation, I also do want to mention about a year ago, we did have some of our alumni that are flying at CommutAir. Cassie helped coordinate this, do a video with Flying Magazine, and really this was something that all of them echoed as far as sentiments, the same things that Detroit mentioned, the close-knit family feel as a company and the growth potential to United, and really having that high quality of life. So it seems like that is a very big trend with CommutAir pilots. And Cassie, can you please walk us through the compensation your first officer and then subsequently upgrading to captain pilot might expect at CommutAir?
Sure, absolutely. So when you join us, you're basically going to be earning $38.02 per flight hour. And then at year 2, you will jump up to $40.56. And then when you do move over to the left seat, your pay will jump to $66.54. We do have that 75-hour monthly pay guarantee and also 100% deadhead pay, cancellation pay. Per diem is $1.85 per hour per diem. You do have a uniform allowance, and you also are going to have an EFB, which is an electronic flight bag.
And what additional benefits might a pilot that is flying for CommutAir be eligible for?
So you're going to have access to medical, dental, vision, and then short-term disability and life insurance are both going to be company paid. You are going to get travel benefits with United Airlines as well as jumpsuit privileges with most major carriers, including FedEx and UPS. But your KCM jumpsuit privileges will happen after you complete your SIM PC check.
Perfect. And that's beneficial for you guys that are maybe a little bit earlier on in your career, because that gives you one additional seat to be able to travel somewhere if you are able in that known crew member system and able to jump seats. And then moving forward, Cassie, can you please just walk us through, this is something that you are part of the United Aviate program, so can you please walk us through as a United Express carrier, just some of the different ways that someone can enter into Aviate, so everything from students and instructors to independently entering as a first officer at CommutAir.
Absolutely. So there's 2 different scenarios I'm going to walk you through. So the first one is basically going to be if you're applying from the street, you've already got your 1,500 hours and you submit your airline apps to us. So we put you through the interview process and we give you a conditional job offer. That's going to allow you to go interview with United for the Aviate program. So you'll put your airline apps application into airline apps through the United Express partnership. You'll then go to Denver for an interview. They're going to do a full HR as well as a technical interview with you, and also the Hogan assessment. The Hogan assessment is no longer it's no longer pass fail. It's just a basic assessment. If you are accepted into Aviate, they're going to put you on what's called the FIFO list. It's the first in, first out list. I like to think about it as a thermometer. So you're going to be placed on this thermometer, and then you will come back to CommutAir. You're going to fulfill your time requirements at CommutAir, and you're going to slowly creep up the FIFO list, slowly creep up that thermometer. And then once you get to the top, that's when you would transition over to United Airline, bearing in mind that you meet all the requirements, including having a degree. Okay, and then the second one is when let's say you're at ATP right now, and you're going to have the opportunity to interview with Aviate when you're a private pilot. So it's going to be the exact same process. You would interview with Aviate. If they accept you into it, you would then continue to build your time to meet ATP minimums. And then you would elect one of the 3 different Aviate partners. So it's CommutAir, Air Wisconsin, and Mesa. So you would choose one of those. You'd have to interview, of course, and get through the interview process with the different regionals. And then you could make your decision. And then you would go to that regional, build your time, and then transition to Aviate. So it's all about getting on that FIFO list and then, building your time, making the necessary requirements, and then transitioning over to United.
Perfect, but it is a very clearly defined pathway. Just one follow-up question for our lower time viewers. You mentioned that Hogan assessment. What is that? Can you walk us through that?
The Hogan is kind of like a personality assessment. It's not something that you can study for. It's something that you kind of, and they say don't study for it because it's something that you just need to go in and take, and they're just going to ask you different questions. So it's like a personality assessment. It's just a tool that United has used. Other major carriers use different tools as well. And so you just kind of go in, take that assessment, and then they're going to look at your, how you did, and then rate that along with everything else in the interview.
Perfect, thank you. Now, once a pilot does interview and receives a conditional job offer at CommutAir, can you detail the training process for us?
Yes, absolutely. So training is paid. That 75-hour monthly pay guarantee does follow you through training. Your seniority in class is determined by your date of birth, and then your domicile assignments are based on seniority and the number of vacancies in the domicile. Like I said earlier, pre-COVID, Newark was our junior base. We do have single occupancy lodging throughout training. Per diem is not paid through training. Basic in-dock and systems, so that's 5 weeks in Dallas, and then so that's going to be your ground school. So you'll complete that, and then you'll have 3 days of graphic flight simulator, which is referred to as GFS. And then from there, you're going to transition to full motion sim. Bear in mind that we do use all of our own instructors, so you'll have C5 ground and C5 sim instructors with you at all times. The sim locations are either in Cincinnati or Houston. It's going to be 13 sim sessions. It is a basic check, so it's not AQP. So the difference is AQP kind of does stage checks versus a traditional check is what we do right now. It's just one final check at the end. We are going to be transitioning to AQP in the future. And then once you pass your sim PC check, you will go out on IOE, which is your initial operating experience for 25-hour minimum with one of our line check pilots.
Perfect. Awesome. Now, now that someone would be hired at this point and through training and through IOE, can you walk us through your very generous commuter policy? And I have to say, this is something that CommutAir is really known for in the industry. And can you also explain why it is something that is really important to take into account when considering which airline to fly for?
Absolutely. So, not everybody wants to live in the Northeast in Newark. We understand that. So some people do. So you might live in Florida, for instance. So we do have a friendly commuter policy with that. So we do offer parking reimbursement at your home airport, and then also 4 company paid hotel rooms per month for you to use. So for instance, if you're living in Florida and you have an early call out in Newark, you can jump seat up to Newark, and then you can use one of those hotel rooms. So you would call crew scheduling, they would handle the reservation for you, and then you would have a room on the front end of your trip. So use on the front or the back end of your trips. And then we also have an unlimited make a good effort to get to work. So the way this works is that we ask that you list on 2 flights, you go to the airport, and then basically what happens is if the flights fill up or you're not able to get on the jump seat, but you do make a good effort and can show that, then you would not be penalized.
Perfect. All right, and now that we're actively flying, we do want to talk about after someone is on her reserve and moving forward as far as bidding that. So we're going to watch a short video on how bidding for a schedule works.
All right, yeah, I'm Colin McDevitt. I'm a crew planning analyst, and I've been at CommutAir for 2.5 years now. Yeah, a lot of people do have questions about bidding when it comes time to do it. Bidding is when you put in preferences for how you want to work for the next month. You can prefer to only work weekends. You can prefer to have weekends off. You can prefer to work 5 days in a row with 2 days off specifically, or only get awarded schedules where you fly to the southeast so that you can sleep somewhere where it's warm. You can prefer to fly trips where you stay in a certain destination for like a day and a half before taking the next flight out, kind of giving you a relaxed trip.
A relaxed trip, very nice. So as far as schedules, Cassie, how far in advance might a CommutAir first officer know their schedule, and how many days off a month are they guaranteed?
Okay, so we utilize a preferential bidding system called PBS to do all of our bidding. There are 12 bid periods in a year. So bid preferences would open up on the 6th. of each month. So that's when you would go in and you would kind of decide, this is what I want to do next month. So if you had a certain obligation with family that you wanted to, not be working, you would put all that in your bid. And of course, this is all based on seniority. The bid would then close on the 13th of the month, and then your schedule for the following month would be posted on the 17th. So you're going to know well in advance what you can do on your off time the following month. With reserve, you're guaranteed 11 days off, and then with a line holder, you're guaranteed 12 days off a month. And then there are two types of reserve. Reserve realistically is about 3 to 6 months right now, depending on your base. So there's two types of reserve. There is short haul reserve, and this is kind of when it helps to be living in base. So you have a 2-hour call out, so you can be at your house or your crash pad, and then you'd have to be at the airport within 2 hours, and that is a max 12-hour shift. And then the second type of reserve is called airport standby, and that's when you really need to be in the crew room. It's a 30-minute call out, and it's a max of an 8-hour shift that day.
Perfect. And for our viewers that are just starting out as well, with this schedule, just so you guys know, there are opportunities too, once it's assigned, and Cassie, maybe you can walk them through this, to do things like trip trading if you do happen to not get time off when you have something.
Absolutely. So you can do trip trading with other pilots. You can put it out there and try and move your schedule around based on what you need. We do have a lot of pilots who are actually Australian pilots. So a lot of them decide they want to work the whole front end of the month, and then they travel back to Australia for the second half of the month. So it really is guaranteed, it's geared toward what you want to do with your life. And even if you don't necessarily get it, there is an opportunity to trade that trip and possibly get with somebody else and get what you need to have off.
It's one of the many benefits of an aviation career. So now, because you are part of the United family and a United Express carrier, can you walk us through why these core 4 values are really important characteristics for pilots to exemplify, not only once at United, but also at CommutAir?
Yes, I mean, you're going to hear a lot about the core 4 values at United as well as at all the United Express partners. So we consider all of these elements when making a decision. So the first one is, of course, being safe, protecting ourselves, protecting each other and customers by always putting safety first. Second is caring. We want to be welcoming, kind, and sensitive and compassionate, of course, to our customers. Dependable, are we developing trust by being reliable and consistent with the quality of our performance? And then finally, being efficient. Are we creating excellence by being organized? Are we improving in areas that we need to improve upon? Are we communicating well? So the core 4 values is what we use really in our day-to-day operation. And you're going to hear a lot about it with all United carriers as well as United itself.
Perfect. Thank you. And as we reach the end of the formal presentation, Cassie, one of the last questions that we have for you, obviously you visited a number of training centers and met with our students and instructors pre-COVID, and right now we are doing this as a means to communicate and get that information out despite social distancing. And can you just provide us some advice? What would your one piece of advice be to students and instructors that are listening in and are still in that time build phase?
Absolutely. Well, I do hope to get out to the ATP Flight School soon. I enjoyed coming out and visiting with everybody and learning about everybody and also hearing about their dreams and aspirations. But for now, this is good. This is a great way to do it. So my advice to you right now, I know things are different in the aviation industry with the pandemic, and our futures may have to be delayed a little bit. So the biggest advice I can give to you is just to be flexible. Be flexible in looking at your future opportunities. Be flexible with regards to where you'd be domiciled at, where your base would be at. Be flexible in knowing that it may take you a little bit longer to get there, and then also once you're there, take a little bit longer to get to the left seat. So that's my biggest advice, just to be flexible as well as patient.
Perfect. All right, now guys, I'm going to go ahead and exit this presentation, but before we do move on to our viewer Q&A, I do also just want to ask Cassie, since you are actively hiring, to walk us through the interview process.
Okay, absolutely. So with most regional carriers, as well as most mainline carriers, everybody uses airline apps. So I highly encourage you, if you have not looked at airline apps, to go ahead and look at them. So what you would do is you would go in, and I advise you to take your time when you're building your airline apps application, because this is going to follow you throughout your career. Like I said, a lot of most mainline carriers use it. And so if you're applying to Aviate as well, United would be looking at it as well. So take your time on it, put in all the information correctly, and then you would submit it to us. And then if we felt that all of your qualifications met our requirements, we would then reach out to you to do a phone screen. So the phone screen is just going to go over your history, what you've done so far with regards to training or your work history in flying. We're going to go over your training record. So we'll ask if you've had any failures. We do understand that failures happen. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give to you is, what did you learn from it? You know, what did you learn moving forward? We're always growing, we're always evolving in aviation. So that's what I like to hear, is what did I learn and how will I use it going forward in the cockpit? You know, so basically once we do that phone screen, we will then, you know, elect to offer to bring you on for an interview. The interview is going to be just like this. It's a virtual interview. Half of it's going to be HR with myself or Nancy, who's one of our pilot recruiters up in Cleveland, and half of it's going to be with one of our pilots. So you'll have a lot of the basic HR questions, a lot of situational awareness, CRM questions. And then on the technical side, we tailor it to the individual. So we're going to tailor it. If you're a 1,500-hour pilot, we're going to tailor it to what we feel that you know. So we generally do what's a mock flight. So for instance, we say, you know, Washington Dulles to Asheville. So we're going to go through weather. So we'll go through like a METAR and a TAFT, and then we're going to go through basically the flight. So we're going to do some Jeppesen charts, approach plates. We'll have you do, you know, an IFR. We'll have you basically walk us through the flight, you know, and just kind of ask you questions throughout. So it's very laid back, and it's a great opportunity to kind of get to know you as well.
Perfect. And now in the interview, I know on a previous slide in the presentation, you had mentioned the core 4 values at United.
Mm-hmm.
So how important is that to maybe for applicants that are thinking about putting together the answers to those tell me about a time when questions, that they really reflect that they are safe, caring, dependable, and efficient?
Absolutely. So yes, we'll always be tying back to those core 4 values. So we're always going to be looking for, what are your CRM skills? You know, what is your view on safety? You know, you're the face of the customer when you come to any sort of airline. So it's really going to be a lot about, you know, you technically what you can do, but also what you can do as an individual for the company as well.
Perfect. And now, are there any maybe common errors that you see throughout the interview process or application process that you have maybe recommendations on really just paying attention, be it paying attention and double checking before you submit, or you know, just ensuring logbooks are tabbed, things like that?
Definitely, you know, I think this day and age with logbooks, we see all sorts of logbooks. We see the basic, you know, writing in logbook. We also see electronic logbooks, which are great too. So attention to detail is important. You know, we do see that in airline apps, you know, so that is our first impression of you. So that's why I always say take your time with it, because it is a lengthy process that you're going to have to go through, and it's best to do it right in the beginning, so you're not having to go back and double check everything. I think one of the biggest things, like I said earlier, is what I like to see if there has been a blip in your record, or a blip that, you know, you may not be proud of, but, you know, we understand that. What did you learn from it? So how did you evolve? How did you grow? Those sorts of things are important.
Perfect. And I'm sure the same goes for check ride failures as well.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And you mentioned airline apps. So for someone who may be approaching or reaching ATP minimums in the coming months that's listening, that's interested, when do you recommend a pilot submits an airline app?
Well, pre-COVID, you know, we used to have the tuition reimbursement that's kind of on hold right now with ATP, but we would look at you as early as 500 hours. Not to say that I wouldn't look at you now at 500 hours. I'm always happy to have a conversation with somebody and talk to them about our company and talk to them about their dreams. You can submit it then, or you could submit it a little bit later on. You may not necessarily get a call at 500 hours, but if you were to see me in person, or if you needed to reach out to me, Ashley can always put you in touch with me. But I would say you could do it shortly before you get to 1,500 hours, and then we would be looking at it then.
Okay. And I know this was actually a question that we had just discussed the other day, that one of our instructors that's approaching ATP minimums had. How right now can someone designate if they are approved in the Aviate program and push that information out to you guys?
So one thing that you're going to see in the airline apps, if you are involved in Aviate, is you can pull down there's affiliations. So when you pull, our affiliations will be changing soon, just being updated. You'll see basically right now it says the CPP program, and that's basically the career path program, which was, the name of it before it turned to Aviate. So you could click on that to let us know that you're involved in it, and then you can type in Aviate. That's also an area where you could say that you're part of OBAP, or you're part of Women in Aviation, or GPA. So that's kind of where you let us know what you're involved in.
Perfect.
Okay.
And thank you so much for taking the time to really discuss career opportunities at CommutAir with us today, Cassie. We'll move on to our viewer Q&A now. And I do know that we have a couple that came in via email from one of our instructors, Randy. And so he just wanted to know, with CommutAir taking over ExpressJet aircraft, is there any preference for hiring or interviewing as far as pilots that are perhaps already affiliated with United?
So, of course, my thoughts go out to all the pilots at ExpressJet and all the employees at ExpressJet. And yes, we are right now looking for pilots who, have that 121 experience, may have the 145 experience, were involved in a furlough from a United Express carrier, or even who are in Aviate. So yes, we are looking at those, and preferential interviews will be coming to many of those.
Perfect. And then a follow-up question: with United replacing the Career Path program, how would you encourage students and instructors get involved with CommutAir early on in their career?
I think the biggest thing is, if you want to get involved with CommutAir, or even just United in general, the best pathway forward is through Aviate. So I highly recommend that you go look on United's website. I think it's aviate.com if I'm not mistaken, and unitedaviate.com. Research Aviate and look at what they're looking for. There's a lot of I think like questions and answers on there, and that's a great opportunity to get into Aviate and to get into United, and then come to one of the different regionals that's involved.
Perfect. And then can you share some insight on into CommutAir's growth potential as a company in the future?
So there is going to be growth. I mean, it's a very fluid situation right now with COVID. So like I mentioned earlier, we are going to be taking on aircraft. I think I said 60 by the end of the year, and then 80 in Q1. But a lot of it just depends on demand. A lot of it depends on the hours that we fly for United, and how quickly the demand bounces back from the industry as a whole. But yes, there is going to be growth, and there is going to be expansion with that new base into Houston, and new cities added to our ops specs, and also flying into Mexico.
Perfect. And then additionally, so it looks like on Facebook Live, we had just a question. So you mentioned Embraer 145 type rated pilots, but as far as someone who might be on a 175 type rating, is there some?
Absolutely.
Just walk us through.
Yes, I mean, of course we're looking at everything. We're looking at, if you've got CRJ experience, if you've got jet experience, there's experience out there. So absolutely, we will be looking at all of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so again, just with the interview process as is right now, can you please walk us through just kind of just the overall preference? Because right now at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a requirement to have the ATP certificate, or at least that is a very, very big preference right now.
Right now it is, and I think that just has a lot to do with what's going on in the industry. So right now we do want you to have your ATP. Now, in 6 to 8 months, I can't tell you what the aviation industry is going to do. So, everything could change. It's just such a fluid situation. I don't necessarily think that everyone needs to run out and get their ATP. That's just a very personal decision on where you are in your career. There's a lot of places in the industry where you can fly right now, without it. So, if somebody wanted to talk to me on a case-by-case basis about it, I'd be happy to talk to them. But it's really an individual decision, in my opinion.
Okay, perfect. And all right, go ahead and look for some of our viewer Q&A. So go ahead and get those questions for Cassie coming in. So while we're waiting for some of you guys to type those, I have a couple more for you. So
sure.
Can you, obviously at this point, we don't know what the future holds as far as, bases and things like that. But as far as pre-COVID, can you walk us through maybe what your junior base was?
Okay, so yeah, pre-COVID, I kind of like to say pre-COVID, I'll kind of walk you through what CommutAir was like. So we're currently at 37 planes. So we're a much smaller regional than a lot of the regionals out there. So yes, Newark was our junior base. And basically what I would say is that, a lot of our pilots were awarded Newark just because I think the majority, 75% of our flying was out of Newark. So that has kind of decreased a lot with COVID. We're not really flying that much out of Newark yet, but so basically, you would be assigned Newark, and then basically as you increase your seniority, a lot of pilots would eventually bid over to Dulles if they preferred to be at Dulles. So a lot of it was just, preferential, whatever they wanted, what their preference was and what their seniority was. But then yet again, a lot of times what I would say to people is that, when captain openings would happen, your captain opening might be in Newark. So if you were based in Dulles as an FO, then your captain position might be in Newark as well. So like I said, it's always good to be flexible and go with what's out there.
Perfect. And then speaking of first officers versus captains, prior to March, can you talk about what your upgrade time was and how, even though you might not know what that will be in the future right now, your rapid expansion really does benefit that opportunity for anybody that's hired as a first officer?
Right. So prior to COVID, we were actually, we were in great need of direct entry captains. So we were basically hiring anybody who could, who qualified to go under 121-436 as the FAR, if you're curious to read about it, but who could kind of go directly into that left-hand seat. So that was pre-COVID. So our upgrade time was basically a lot had to depend on when you got that 1,000 hours, were you ready to move over to the left-hand seat? So it was fairly quickly.
Perfect. And now I know that we do actually we had a couple people that were registered. Just we'll share this information since they are listening in. Can you talk a little bit about you said you had Australian pilots, so your forgetting the acronym for it, but for your visa program.
Yeah, so we did have, yes. So it currently is on hold right now with with what's going on. All the consulates are still closed. So that E3 program is not currently open, but it's called the E3 program. That's the visa that they would get. So yes, we do have a lot of great Australian pilots who do fly for us right now. Some of them do help out in recruiting, and they are a great group of guys, but they and gals, they also, like I said, a lot of them bid that schedule to where they will literally fly the first 2 weeks out of the year, and then they fly home to Australia for the other 2 weeks. So that bidding schedule lets you kind of do what you like once you get that seniority underneath your belt. Perfect.
And with the opening of the Houston base, I know you mentioned Mexico, but as far as additional routing, because I know we have as well some viewers that are more on the West Coast, so they might be interested in knowing some of the additional destinations that.
As of right now, I know some of them. I can tell you that they're going to be kind of in Texas and Oklahoma and then east. So that's kind of what I know so far, but I don't know anything west yet of Texas. Okay.
Perfect. But hey, for everyone that's listening in that is interested in Houston, that's a new additional base. And
yes.
Perfect. Awesome. And then, all right. Another thing that you had mentioned previously in our session was just talking about some of those benefits. And I know that we talked about the known crew member and talked about jump seat privileges and really also in relation to your very generous commuter policy. So can you just walk us through what a typical trip might look like for a pilot flying for commuter?
Okay, it really depends. I mean, there's a lot of, there's some 2-day trips, there's some 4-day trips. There are some overnight trips. We have a lot of, since we are in the Northeast, we have a lot of up and down trips, so very quick trips, 30-minute trips up, so very fast. And you can really bid what you want to bid. A lot of people like to fly the longer routes, so the routes from Newark to Jacksonville or Newark out to St. Louis. It really just depends on the individual. We do fly to some great places up north as well, way up north. So into Canada is fun for our pilot group too. It's fun to go into Canada.
And then with those non-rev benefits,
Mm-hmm.
can you walk us through just how in addition to being able to jump seat on commuter, how priority works, and then with United and also the ID90 and additional
Sure.
benefits?
So you and in your immediate family would get privileges with United when you start with us, and then after 6 months of employment, you'd be able to fly ID90, which is most major other carriers as well. So you have jump seat privileges, so you can always utilize that when you are in uniform, of course. But yeah, so you're basically, if you're flying your own metal, you have top priority. So when you're flying on a commuter flight, non-revving, you would have top priority when you're listed as a non-rev. And then, basically, as you know, if you're flying for mainline, you're kind of going to be a little bit lower on that list. But it is a great opportunity to travel. When the flights are open, it's a lot of fun to travel. I haven't utilized it very much, but I hope to do that in the future.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So I think a question that maybe is just a follow-up question from looking on our Facebook Live is, can you just walk us through again the opportunities over when someone could potentially apply, and knowing that maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be interviewing in the immediate future, but when they should start thinking about getting that application together, and maybe some tips as well on a little bit earlier on some things that they can proactively do to prepare themselves for that application and subsequent interview.
Okay, so I mean, a lot of it's really up, like I said, a lot of it's up to the individual. You may be working you may be flight time building at ATP, and you may be going from 500 hours to 1,500 hours very quickly. So working on that app and getting it submitted, and then just updating it as you continue to grow is definitely one way to do it. Some people wait until they're close to those ATP minimums and then submit it. I do meet a lot of pilots, young flight students when I'm out traveling, and I always encourage them to call me. They can find me on LinkedIn as well. They can ask me any questions, about that, and just trying to stay in touch with them as well. So, it definitely might take a little bit longer right now in that career progression. I hope that turns around, quicker than, sooner than later, let's say. But it's one of those things that it depends on the individual and how quickly they want to get that airline app into us. But, it's going to take some time to build it, and, take your time on it. And then I also kind of suggest to people that, one of the things is that we talk about being involved in aviation. It's great to be involved in different organizations like, OBAP, Women in Aviation. But you can also, I also like to hear about what people like to do outside of aviation. That's one of the questions that I do ask, because I'm curious to know, what else do you like to do? What are your hobbies? Some people are amazing athletes, and they tell me about, these amazing stories that they do. So it's nice to get to know an individual, as a whole, not just looking at their flying.
Perfect. And following up on that, so when they're going through the interview process, what are some just maybe common areas that you see that applicants might be a little bit nervous to answer those types of questions? Like, do you have any advice on how to really show that you have, like we talked about before, learned from maybe a check ride failure?
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the biggest things I like to hear is what did you learn? I don't want to hear an excuse. It's what did you learn at the end of the day? And then, secondly, it's one of the biggest questions that I stump people on, and it's, for some reason, is I ask, what's your biggest weakness? And then I kind of tell them what my weakness is, so to kind of calm them down a little bit. But what is your biggest weakness, and what's an area that you can always improve upon, because we all have those. A lot of it's organizational skills, and but I do like to have that honesty in an interview. So, but that's a question that kind of stumps people. They're like, almost, they don't want to tell me sometimes. So.
And I think what's important for our viewers to know too is the interviews are set up to, at the beginning, to really open up and have that dialogue and calm nerves. And some of the questions are really just to kind of get to know you, like you said, as an applicant, before getting into the ones that you're looking for, not necessarily a specific answer, but an answer that exemplifies, skills that are relevant to the job that they.
And I also think that's something that's great, as I love when people come prepared. I love when people come and they know about our company, or they know what our bases are. They know where we fly. So there's, certain people will come in and they'll just completely knock your socks off with the history of the company. So that's great too. And, but I'm definitely there to answer questions. I enjoy this job so much. I enjoy, talking with pilots and giving pilots their first step into the 121 world. It's an exciting time for pilots, when they get that opportunity. So I love to do that. And I just think it's very rewarding.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, with the Aviate program going forward, I know that when I was looking, and this is something that you mentioned before, but I just really want to make our students and instructors know about this opportunity, because you are actively hiring. So that is listed right now as a preference. So as far as hiring, it looks like there's preference towards prior, obviously, 121 experience, those with the 145 type rating, and then those in the United hemisphere or network, so to speak.
Right, they're like the ecosystem.
That's where I was going.
Yes. Yes, I mean, that's it is a little bit more competitive right now. Not to say that, I may have somebody come in, we try to look at everybody. We do have quite a few applications right now, but we are going to be looking at everybody who applies to us. That experience is great, but then you will have, the great 1,500-hour pilot who applies to you, who has done a stellar job as well. So I do like to be open-minded and look at all the applications that are coming through.
Perfect. And aside from being affiliated with Aviate, are there any additional things that you recommend an applicant can maybe do to help themselves stand out?
I think persistence. I think that, I will say that I do, I definitely can remember some people, and when I go to career fairs, I like the ones that come up to me and they're like, "Hey, Mrs. Outcalt," and they see me, and I think that's, that's great. It shows that they remember me and I remember them, and it's building that relationship as you're building your time, and because that shows a lot about who you are as an individual as well.
Sure. And something that we were talking about, and obviously this is, a little bit more flying has to happen, and hopefully we have a vaccine come out soon, and we all see that, the hiring demand that really will return, but we hope it returns sooner with the development of a vaccine. But can you talk about, with the old career path program and now Aviate, just as far as opportunities and involvement at the local flight school level, some of the opportunities that do exist for your partner schools?
You're talking about with Aviate?
Not with Aviate, but just in general of the opportunity to potentially get some type of mentorship, and with even some of your flight training partners. So connect with a pilot and a recruiter kind of earlier
right on. I mean, I definitely think there's always that opportunity to connect with a pilot. Also the pilots who are helping us out and with recruiting, they're always willing to talk to pilots as well, and kind of guide them in their career moving forward. Let them know what's important, what's important to study, and at the same time, we've talked about the pilot shortage. There was this huge pilot shortage prior to COVID. That may be paused for a little bit, but I think the numbers are there for the future that we are still going to have that pilot shortage. So knowing that it is going to come back, what can you do to prepare yourself for when it is there? I would highly recommend researching the different regionals, researching kind of I always say everyone has a goal, everyone has that dream, and it's great to chase after that dream and follow that dream, but also, what else is out there, because sometimes, as I always say, you may have that dream, but if it doesn't work out, something else does, then you're like, wow, this is, I'm so happy this happened to me. So I highly always recommend just, researching and looking at the different opportunities that are out there and the different companies that are out there. There's also great 135 companies out there, to help build if you're not going to instruct, to help build your flight time. There's a lot of charter opportunities right now as well. So it's just really kind of looking at the industry as a whole and, trying to find your path forward.
Perfect. And it looks like on Facebook, Randy would like to know, hey, Randy, again, he had all those great questions he emailed in. He said, can you just repeat one more time, how are domiciles selected during initial training at CommutAir?
So domiciles are always, so it's always seniority wise. So it's about your date of birth. So you get into your class, and if you have 16 people in your class, it's always going to be by your date of birth. So you'll be, that's how it's seniority in class by date of birth. And then we'll look at the number of vacancies in each domicile. So right now with Houston growing, Houston could definitely be a possibility. You know, Newark right now, there's not a lot of flying there. If that comes back, we did a ton of flying out of Newark. So that's why I always say Newark was our junior base. Not to say you couldn't transfer to Dulles, but I do think there's going to be an opportunity as well to go, you know, to have growth in Houston.
Perfect. And it seems like Newark at that area is generally speaking the junior base across.
As they always say, though, as I always tell people, I say, as I've been told many times, I'm only a private pilot, but everyone tells me if you can fly in the Northeast, you can fly anywhere. So it's good to have that Northeast experience.
Yeah, speaking from experience, it's definitely true. It makes you a heightened sense of awareness.
Right.
Now, what is the deciding factor between sim training in either Cincinnati or in Houston?
So it's also going to go back to your seniority. So all that kind of plays into effect with, you know, we also have, of course, recurrent training is always going on. So where the openings are, you know, but based on your sim time and where you're going to go, as a lot of it depends as well on your seniority.
Okay, perfect. And Guillermo would like to know, just can we go over again, how long is training for new hiring? And I'm not sure if this is information that you even have yet, but if you do, if maybe you could just share some insight onto how many pilots you might be looking to hire, obviously based on the recovery.
So basic induct and systems is 5 weeks in Dulles. So that's kind of so basic induct is when you kind of learn about the company and you're going to do all your benefits information, and then you start systems training, you know, which is a very intense ground school training. And then from there you do GFS, which is that graphic flight simulator, and then you would transition over to full-time sim. So it is going to take up a few months of your life. It's a great time to bond with your classmates. I know a lot of pilots, and some that I've hired from ATP, you know, have such great friends now from their initial classes, and they're all on, you know, WhatsApp and, you know, Snapchat and all these apps that I'm too old to use, but so they're always, you know, communicating with each other, and they've, you know, got this great bond. So it's where you're going to really learn and focus, and but also create, you know, great friendships at C5.
Perfect. And with training, is there something that you would recommend that pilots can do in the meantime from when maybe they receive a CJO to really prepare in advance for?
So we would give you what's called, I don't know if all of you are familiar with the term paper tiger, but you would get what's called a paper tiger to kind of go over and look at the cockpit on a paper format. And then you would get a pre-training study guide. So we would want you to kind of look at that, you know, learn your call outs, you know, and do as much as you can. You know, those who apply to us who haven't gone to the ATP CT course yet, you know, they would also have to study for that as well. So there's a lot of studying that goes into it, but yeah, it's definitely being prepared. And then when you get to training, my advice is to train with the pilots that are with you, you know, train in the lobby in the hotel, you know, social distancing, of course, right now because of COVID, but yes, definitely getting together and, you know, studying together and learning together.
For sure. That seems to be, you know, in any environment, in any industry, studying together helps you, you know, you have the difference not only between reading it, but the auditory visual cues to really help that sink in. Now, this might not be something that you have information on, but after the Houston base opens, is there, we'll just say generally, are there any plans for expansion to additional bases?
I don't have that information. I don't, so I'm sorry, but I'm excited about Houston because for a long time, you know, I would have 2 bases to tell pilots, Newark and Dallas. And now that I get to have Houston in the mix, I think it's a great, it's a good time. It's a unique time for CommutAir. It's an exciting time for us, and we're ready for the opportunity and we're ready for the growth. And I think you asked earlier how many pilots you thought I was going to be hiring. Well, we're currently at 37 aircraft and we have 450 active pilots. So if we're going to be growing to 60 and then 80, and above, I think everyone can do the math.
Which is quite a few. So
Yes.
it's definitely exciting times and
Mm-hmm.
information to be sharing, and really just to get this news out, because obviously there are so many pilots right now that are excited
There are,
about
and
the.
there's a lot of furloughed pilots right now too, that I know it's been very hard on them as well. So we hope to get out there, and we will be starting the interview process fairly soon, and getting people in and getting people screened.
And now, as far as the interviews being done virtually, are there any recommendations that you have of just dealing with that in a different type of environment than an in-person interview?
Well, we actually even pre-COVID, we did our interviews virtually. So that's nothing new for us. We've always done them, virtually. And then, no, I think the biggest thing is, I know sometimes you have internet connections, that problems, we understand that. But no, I think just treat it like anything else. Come prepared, be professional. And, we've been in interviews where dogs have jumped up, and, we completely understand all that. And we like that because it shows us who you are as well. And then what we used to do pre-COVID is we would do everything virtually, and then we would bring you up to Cleveland prior to you starting indoc to what's called onboard. So that would be kind of like either a one-night stay in Cleveland or even a day trip, depending on where you were. So we would bring you up to Cleveland for the onboarding process, which is where we go over all of your paperwork. We would go over your logbooks. We would fingerprint you. You're going to be also drug tested as well. So that onboarding process is when you would physically come to see our headquarters. You would get a little tour and see kind of, where the C5 life is at.
Perfect. No, so with those situations that you talked about, though, being virtual and maybe experiencing just some, situations that you weren't prepared for if you're on the applicant side, do you just have any tips as far as, making sure you're still looking the part, and maybe how to handle those situations where a dog interrupts, or,
I think, definitely be professional and looking the part, but also being yourself. It's important, and it's definitely, it can be, of course, a face-to-face is always, always better, but in times like this, the capability that we have, with technology is great, sharing presentations and, sharing, different scenarios, and we did a 3-way, we used to use Skype. So just doing like a 3-way Skype. It's just being yourself, really, and just relaxing and, and giving it all that you've got.
Now, if and when CommutAir starts to interview pilots at a little less than 1,500, so, or maybe if they're not quite to either ATP or restricted ATP, would a ATP CTP course completion be beneficial? I'd like to know.
Like I said, I think that's a very individual, a personal question. If you feel that's going to make yourself, more competitive, and you have the capabilities to do that, then, that's a decision that I'd say, absolutely go for it. Some people may not be at that stage. Like I said, I don't know where the industry is going to be in 8 months or even a year. So it's something to look at and try and make the best decision, that you feel is right for you. But like I said, some people are going to go out and fly, 135 for a while, and they may not need that. So it's just really up to the individual and the pathway that they take forward, moving forward. But I think that, with that pilot shortage being there, I don't know, it's delayed, and we know that, but eventually that will be back. So things may, kind of change back to the way they were.
Sure. So it might be for someone that is, because in this case, it's someone that is approaching ATP minimums to be a more competitive applicant.
Okay. And I mean, like I said too, on individual cases like that, if you want to reach out and ask Ashley, if you can reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you about it individually as well.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. And looks like we've got through all of our questions. So I do want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Absolutely.
And answer all of our questions, and really just share the exciting news that CommutAir is hiring, that you're opening a Houston base, and that there is that potential for advancement, and really the the progression, especially for our viewers that are ATP students and instructors, to secure, in the future once Aviate resumes interviewing with Aviate, and then that progression to a United Express partner such as CommutAir, and all the way through to United Airlines proper. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, I highly recommend, I highly recommend students to go look at Aviate who are currently with ATP. You've picked a great place to learn how to train. We've hired some phenomenal pilots, from ATP, and hope to do so in the future as well. So I commend all of you for what you're doing, and thank you for having me today, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
looks like we're getting a lot of viewers telling you thank you as well.
Absolutely.
So on behalf of all of us at ATP, thank you, Cassie, for
Yep.
joining us today. And for
Okay.
anyone that does have more questions or would like to receive information on CommutAir, your website is flycommutair.com. So that's where you'll be able to.
And please follow us on social media. So, we are out there on social media, and we love to have, new people join us on social media. So thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, go ahead, and their handle on Facebook is at CommutAir, and that brings up the CommutAir recruiting page, as we were discussing before, Cassie. So go ahead and follow that, and we hope everyone has a great weekend and fly safe.
All right, take care, everybody.